I never thought the housewarming party for my first home would turn into a stage for my own humiliation. At the time, I didn't know how true those words would become. The night was supposed to be filled with warmth, not shadows. Even then, as I set out little bowls of pecans and laid a fresh pie Rachel had brought in onto the counter, I caught Nathan staring at his phone more than he was looking at me. The soft glow of the screen reflected in his eyes, distant and secretive. Across the room, Vanessa walked slowly through my apartment, fingers grazing the walls as though she were testing ownership. It was only a look, a flicker of something too sharp to be innocent, but it planted a seed of unease inside me. I had dreamed of this moment for years, as a home of my own, in Albuquerque's quiet suburbs, with sunlight streaming through the wide windows each morning. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours, and for a woman expecting her first child, that meant everything. I had painted visions in my head of a nursery filled with gentle yellow light, a crib by the window, and shelves lined with little picture books. My heart swelled each time I imagined rocking my daughter to sleep while the desert sky turned lavender outside. But the dream never stayed whole for long. Nathan had changed after we moved in. He was 35, handsome, the kind of man who carried confidence in the cut of his jaw, but lately there was a hollowness around him. The long hours at work, the buzzing phone turned face down on the table, the way his smile never reached his eyes anymore. I told myself it was stressful and that every marriage had quiet seasons. Still, the silence between us carried weight heavier than words. Then came Vanessa, my sister, who was 2 years older, always the one who acted like she knew better. She was tall, her blonde hair styled perfectly, heels clicking across my hardwood as if she were on a stage. "This place is nice, Emily," she said one afternoon, standing in the middle of my living room with a tape measure stretched across the curtains. "But these won't do. You need something classier for a home like this." Her tone wasn't advice, it was ownership. I froze, groceries heavy in my arms. "Vanessa, how did you get in?" She turned with a half smile. "Nathan gave me a key, said you wouldn't mind." The words sliced into me. A key. To my home. I hadn't agreed to that, hadn't even known. My stomach tightened, and for a moment the baby inside me kicked, as if sensing the tension. I set the bags down carefully, breathing through the wave of nausea. I didn't want to fight, not when I felt so fragile. But my silence was its own kind of wound. That evening I asked Nathan why he'd done it. He shrugged, loosening his tie. "She's family, Emily. She just wants to help." Help! That word clanged in my ears like a warning bell. Help was not rifling through curtains without asking. Help was not unlocking my door when I wasn't home. I stared at him, but his eyes were already back on his phone. I knew the conversation was over before it began. Rachel was the only one who seemed to notice how unsettled I'd become. She had been my best friend since college, and she carried a calmness that steadied me. When she came over the next day with pecan pie still warm from her oven, she leaned against the counter and watched me quietly. "You look tired, Em," she said gently. I laughed it off. "Pregnancy, you know." But her eyes narrowed. "It's not just that, is it? Vanessa's been around a lot." I hesitated. "She acts like this place is hers. It's like I'm just borrowing it." Rachel's hand brushed mine. "Don't let her. This is your home. Remember that." Her words should have been enough, but doubt clung to me like dust on an old photo frame. I remembered childhood Thanksgivings when Vanessa would sit at the head of the table, telling stories as if she were the star while I helped clear the dishes. She had always been the one who shone, while I stayed in her shadow. Maybe this was just another version of the same story. But now it wasn't about who got the bigger slice of pumpkin pie. It was about the home I had fought for, saved for, dreamed of. That night, Vanessa unlocked my door again, and I stood frozen in my own hallway, the scent of her perfume heavy in the air. She stood by the window, measuring, judging, as though I had invited her. My heart pounded, but I swallowed the words burning in my throat. I told myself I couldn't risk stress hurting the baby. When Nathan came home, I tried again. "Why does she have a key, Nathan?" He gave me that thin smile, the one that held no warmth. "She's family, Emily. Don't make a big deal out of it." When I asked Nathan why my sister had a key, he only smiled thinly and said, "She's family, Emily. Don't make a big deal out of it. Trust doesn't shatter with a scream. It cracks slowly, with every unanswered question." The crack had already begun. Each day I noticed Nathan slipping further from me, not in dramatic gestures, but in the little things that added up. He left earlier for work, claiming deadlines. He returned late, loosening his tie as if he'd fought a war, though his face held no trace of exhaustion. At the dinner table, he scrolled through his phone, barely touching the plates I set before him. When I asked who kept messaging him, he would shrug, muttering, "Just work." But work doesn't send messages at 2 in the morning. I told myself it was stress, that I was being hormonal, too sensitive. Still, the silence between us grew heavy, and I could almost hear it echo across the walls of the apartment I had fought so hard to call mine. The heater hummed. The windows reflected the amber of late autumn sunsets, but the air inside was cold. Vanessa's visits didn't help. She appeared without notice, heels clicking against the hardwood, carrying swatches of paint or magazines torn with ideas for upgrades. She treated my living room like a showroom, frowning at my choices, calling them too simple for a home like this. I wanted to shout, "This is my home, not yours." One Saturday afternoon, I walked in with a bag of groceries, only to find her rearranging the pillows on my couch. The blue cushions I'd chosen with care were tossed onto the floor. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" My voice trembled. She turned, calm as ever. "This place deserves better taste, Emily. I'm helping." Helping? That word again, twisting like a knife. My throat tightened. "You don't pay for this place, I did." She arched a brow, unfazed. "Oh, Emily, don't be dramatic. Nathan and I have been supporting you for years. This apartment is as much mine as it is yours." The audacity of her words struck me silent. My hands shook as I set down the grocery bag, apples rolling across the floor. She didn't flinch. She believed her lie so fully it scared me. That night I sat across from Nathan at the dinner table, the smell of roasted chicken filling the air, but I couldn't taste it. I asked him again, "Why does she have a key?" He sighed, pushing his food around with his fork. "She's just trying to help. You're overreacting." Overreacting. The words hit harder than any insult. It meant my fear was invisible, my voice dismissed. I wanted to reach for him, to ask if he still saw me, if he still remembered the woman he promised forever to. But his eyes stayed on his phone, and when the screen lit up, I caught a glimpse of something before he turned it away. Apartment docs. The phrase seared into me. My heart hammered as questions tumbled through my head. What documents? Why was Vanessa's name tied to them? The next morning, while Nathan showered, I did something I had never done. I opened his laptop. My hands trembled as I searched, guilt gnawing at me, but the fear of ignorance was worse. And there it was, an email thread titled Apartment Docs. Attached was the mortgage contract, the one with my signature, my loan, and my years of savings. Nathan had sent it to Vanessa. I scrolled, my breath shallow. She doesn't need to know. "We'll handle it," Vanessa had written. Handle what? The room spun. My pulse roared in my ears as I snapped a photo of the screen with my phone, evidence I couldn't yet understand but knew I would need. My stomach tightened, the baby inside me stirring as if sensing the storm in me. I couldn't keep it inside. That afternoon, I called Rachel and met her at the little coffee shop we'd loved since college. The smell of roasted beans filled the air as she stirred her latte, her eyes narrowing as I poured out the story. "She's acting like she owns your apartment, Emily, and Nathan's helping her," Rachel said firmly. "You need to keep track of this. Every text, every visit, every slip. You'll need proof." The word felt heavy. Proof. I had never thought of my sister or my husband as enemies. But here I was, photographing screens and saving text messages like ammunition. That night, when Nathan walked in, loosening his tie, I looked at him differently. His smile seemed practiced, his touch colder. I tried to find the man I'd married, the man who once painted color swatches with me at midnight. But all I saw was someone building secrets behind my back. The heater hummed. Outside, a neighbor grilled burgers, the smell drifting through the window. Inside, my life felt like it was crumbling silently, one unanswered question at a time. The message on the screen froze me in place. She doesn't need to know. We'll handle it. The night I thought would celebrate our new beginning turned into the night I nearly lost everything. The apartment glowed that evening, with string lights draped across the balcony railing, trays of chips and dip spread across the counter. I wanted it to feel like a fresh start. Laughter echoing through our home, music humming from the rented karaoke machine. Guests smiled as they slipped inside, bringing warmth against the chill of the Albuquerque night. For a moment, I let myself believe the unease of the past weeks had been my imagination. But even in celebration, shadows followed me. Nathan stood in the corner, his glass of wine untouched, his gaze fixed more on his phone than on the faces of the people who had come to celebrate with us. Vanessa arrived late, her entrance sharp and deliberate, her heels clicking like punctuation against the floor. She scanned the room, her smile thin, her eyes assessing every inch of the space as though she were the host, not me. Rachel kept close to my side, helping refill cups and keeping conversation alive, but I caught her glances, watchful, wary, like she sensed the storm approaching. Jessica from work arrived quietly, offering a kind smile, though even she seemed unsettled by the tension simmering in the air. My cousin Sophia raised her glass in greeting, but her eyes lingered on Nathan and Vanessa whispering in the corner, their heads bent too close. I forced myself to breathe, to welcome each guest, to laugh at the small jokes that rippled through the crowd. Yet beneath the surface my chest tightened, my pulse unsteady. I wanted this night to be about new beginnings, about the baby I carried and the home I had dreamed of. But the weight of suspicion pressed against my ribs like a warning I couldn't ignore. The chatter swelled, glasses clinked, and then, suddenly, silence. Vanessa had taken the microphone from the karaoke machine, her posture tall, her expression commanding. "I have an announcement," she said, her voice cutting through the room. Every head turned toward her. I froze, my heart pounding, the baby shifting inside me as if sensing the danger. "I've already spoken to a lawyer," she continued, her eyes flashing with cold confidence. "As of today, I am the rightful owner of this apartment." Gasps erupted. Someone whispered, "What?" Another hand tightened around a glass, its faint sound nearly shattering. Vanessa lifted her chin and pointed directly at me. "Emily doesn't belong here. She can't afford this place. It's time she leaves." The words slammed into me like a blow. My vision blurred, my chest burned, my body froze as every gaze in the room shifted to me. Neighbors, colleagues, family, all staring, waiting for me to collapse under the weight of her claim. Rachel's hand found my arm, her grip firm. "Breathe, Emily," she whispered, steady and calm. But I couldn't breathe. I looked to Nathan, searching for any sign of support, of love, of defense. He stood with his wine glass, eyes on the floor, silent. Not a word, not even a glance. His silence screamed louder than Vanessa's cruelty. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned closer, curious. Sophia's jaw dropped, her fingers clenched tight around her glass as if she might crush it. Jessica's face hardened, her gaze darting between Nathan and Vanessa, piecing together what I already feared. I wanted to scream, to deny her lies, to remind everyone that my name was on the contract, that I had saved every dollar, signed every paper. But my throat closed, the words locked inside me. My mind raced with images, Vanessa sneering in my living room, Nathan's emails, the hidden messages. It was all connected, a net of betrayal closing around me. Vanessa's smirk widened, her eyes daring me to fight back. She thrived on the silence, on the way the room leaned toward her version of reality. In that moment, she had stolen not just my home, but my dignity. Rachel squeezed my arm again, her voice low and steady. "We'll figure this out," she said, a promise in her tone. But even her words felt distant, muffled under the roar in my head. The baby kicked, a reminder of the life inside me, of the future I was supposed to protect. And still, I stood frozen, every eye pressing down on me, my safe place slipping away like sand through my fingers. Every gaze in the room turned on me, as if waiting for me to break. And for the first time I felt my home slipping through my fingers. Betrayal is cruelest when it wears the face you love the most. The days after the party bled together like a long gray smear across my memory. The string lights still hung on the balcony, mocking me with their cheer, but inside, silence weighed down the walls. Nathan left early each morning, his cologne lingering in the hallway long after the door shut. When he returned late at night, I could smell wine on his breath and see the light of his phone reflected in his eyes before he even looked at me. I told myself I needed answers, not from him. He had already chosen silence. But from the whispers that clung to me. That's when Jessica sent me a message at work. "Lunch? It's about Nathan." My stomach clenched. We met at a diner on Central Avenue, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted more like burnt water than beans. Jessica slid into the booth across from me, her eyes scanning the room before she spoke. "I saw them," she said softly. "Nathan and Vanessa. Together, downtown. They weren't acting like brother-in-law and sister." My chest tightened. "Are you sure?" She pulled out her phone and pushed it across the table. There they were, sitting too close in a cafe corner, her hand resting on his arm, their heads bent together. I swallowed hard, the fries on my plate, suddenly tasteless. "Oh, God." Jessica hesitated, then tapped another image. It was a screenshot of a conversation that was caught when Nathan left his phone unlocked near her at work. "Casey's clueless. Once we push her out, the apartment's ours." I covered my mouth with my hand, tears burning hot. It wasn't just my imagination. Not hormones. Not paranoia. It was betrayal, written in his words, wrapped in Vanessa's manipulation. That night, while Nathan slept, I sat in the glow of the lamp with my phone trembling in my hands. I scrolled through his messages, the truth slicing through me. Vanessa's words dripped with venom. "She doesn't deserve that place. We'll make it ours." Nathan's replies were worse. "Keep her distracted. I'll handle the rest." My chest ached, tears falling onto the hospital bracelet I still wore from my first prenatal checkup. I had touched it every night, as a reminder of the life I carried, but now it felt like a chain binding me to a crumbling world. The baby shifted inside me, and I pressed my hand to my belly. "I'll protect you," I whispered, though my voice cracked. By morning, I knew I couldn't face this alone. I called Vanessa, my fingers shaking as I pressed record on my phone. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. Her laugh was cold and sharp. "Emily, you're in over your head. That apartment's too much for you." "I'm just resolving things." My throat tightened. "Resolving? By stealing my home?" A pause. Then her voice dropped lower, darker. "You should have stayed out of the way. Nathan and I will take care of it." My blood turned to ice. She had said it. Admit it. I ended the call with my heart pounding, the recording saved like a weapon in my pocket. Rachel's apartment became my refuge. She opened the door before I could even knock, her arms pulling me in, her living room filled with the scent of cinnamon candles and a pot of soup simmering on the stove. I laid everything out on her kitchen table, the screenshots, the photos, the recording. Rachel listened, her eyes narrowing, her jaw set. "They're trying to erase you," she said fiercely. "But you're smarter than they think. Now you have proof." The word echoed again. Proof. It no longer felt heavy. It felt like armor. I stared at the pile of evidence spread before me. My husband's betrayal, my sister's greed, my broken trust. My hands still shook, but for the first time in weeks I felt a spark of strength ignite. I had been dismissed, humiliated, and silenced. But now I held their lies in my hands, undeniable and sharp. I ended the call with my hands trembling, knowing I now held the evidence that could destroy them both. When family becomes the enemy, justice must become your shield. The apartment I once called home no longer felt like mine. After Vanessa's outburst at the party, the air around me seemed poisoned, every glance from neighbors tinged with suspicion. Her smear campaign spread fast. On social media, she painted me as an unstable wife who had abandoned her husband, who didn't deserve her home. Comments piled up from strangers who didn't know me, siding with her polished lies. I wanted to defend myself, to scream the truth into every glowing screen. But Rachel gripped my shoulders and shook her head. Don't give her that power. Let the truth speak in court, not online. So I waited, and while I waited, I gathered. Rachel and I turned her apartment into our war room. Her kitchen table became a battlefield of papers and screenshots. Every text from Vanessa, every photo Jessica had given me, every recording, every forged email Paula had uncovered. I carried a small notebook, scribbling dates, times, words that struck me like darts. My handwriting shook across the pages, but the record was mine. Some evenings, the apartment felt so heavy with tension that Rachel would force a break. She'd slide a plate of cinnamon rolls from the bakery across the table, their sugar glaze softening the sharp edges of the moment. Eat, she'd insist. You're not just fighting them, Em. You're protecting Ivy. I would press my hand to my belly, whispering to the little life inside me, I'll keep you safe, no matter what it takes. The baby's faint kicks in response felt like the smallest, purest promise. One afternoon, Olivia Grant, the lawyer Rachel had recommended, leaned across the table in her burgundy suit, her posture straight and steady. Her glasses slid down her nose as she flipped through a stack of papers, her pen tapping the table in a rhythm that matched the beat of my heart. This is strong, she said, nodding toward Paula's printed copy of Vanessa's email to a real estate company. The signature Vanessa had forged looked eerily like mine. We can file a complaint for fraud against Vanessa and a violation of privacy against Nathan. With the recordings and screenshots, you have more than enough to win. Her calm authority steadied me, but anger still pulsed in my veins. Evidence on paper wasn't enough. I wanted Nathan's voice. Not the man I had married, but the man he had become, to speak the truth. So I called him. We met at the park near Rachel's apartment, where cottonwood trees rattled in the wind and children's laughter floated from the playground. The air was crisp, the smell of roasted peanuts drifting from a vendor nearby. Nathan walked toward me with a wary look, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked older than he had weeks ago, as if the lies had carved lines into his face. Still, his eyes refused to meet mine. Why, Nathan? I asked, keeping my voice low but steady. Why her? Why my home? He shifted, staring at the ground. It wasn't supposed to go this far. My pulse pounded. You plan to take it from me? He rubbed the back of his neck, his voice uneven. Vanessa and I. It just happened. She said we could sell the apartment and split the money. I didn't mean for what? My voice cracked now, louder than I intended. Didn't you mean to destroy me? To betray everything we've built? His jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. The silence that followed was heavier than any words he could have spoken, and my phone, tucked deep in my coat pocket, captured it all. When he turned and walked away, shoulders hunched, I felt no satisfaction, only grief. Grief for the man I thought I knew, grief for the marriage I had believed in, grief for the trust I had poured into two people who had twisted it into a weapon. Back at Rachel's, we spread the new recording across the kitchen table with the rest of the evidence. She leaned over the pile, her eyes flashing with fury. This is airtight, Em. Olivia's going to tear them apart in court. I sat back down, exhaustion pulling at me. But something in me had shifted. My hands rested on my belly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt steady. This wasn't just about a home. It was about my daughter's future, about proving that betrayal wouldn't define me. The cinnamon candle flickered in Rachel's kitchen, casting a warm glow across the stacks of paper. Outside, the wind howled through the streets, rattling the windows, but inside I felt stronger. I had lost my husband. I had lost the sister I thought I knew. But I hadn't lost myself. I walked away from the park with the recording in my pocket, my marriage in ruins, but my resolve stronger than ever. The courtroom was silent, but inside me a storm raged. On the morning of the hearing, Albuquerque was bathed in a cold light, the kind that made everything look sharper, less forgiving. I wore a simple navy dress, one that stretched against my growing belly and clutched a folder so tightly the papers inside had creases where my fingers pressed. Rachel walked beside me, a steady presence. her hand brushing my elbow as we stepped into the courthouse. The hallway smelled faintly of old wood and dust, muffled voices echoing between tall walls. I passed a bulletin board plastered with notices and flyers. Divorces, custody battles, small-town grievances all reduced to thin sheets of paper. My case was just another name on the docket, yet to me it was everything. Inside the courtroom the air felt heavier. Wooden benches creaked as people settled. Across the room, Vanessa sat stiffly in a charcoal blazer, her platinum hair perfectly smoothed, her mouth drawn tight. Nathan sat beside her, jaw clenched, eyes glued to the floor just as they had been the night she humiliated me at the party. Olivia Grant stood with calm authority, her burgundy suit catching the morning light. When she spoke, her voice carried steady conviction. She laid out the case, screenshots of messages where Nathan and Vanessa plotted, the recording where Vanessa admitted wanting to resolve me out of the way, the forged email Paula had intercepted, and finally, Nathan's own confession at the park. Each piece of evidence felt like a stone laid onto a foundation of truth that could no longer be ignored. I sat quietly, my hands clasped tight in my lap, my bracelet from the first prenatal checkup digging gently into my wrist. My heart thudded with every exhibit Olivia presented, every nod from the judge. I dared not look at Vanessa until Olivia read the transcript of her email to the real estate company, complete with my forged signature. The judge's eyes lifted, sharp and unwavering. "Ms. Lawson, how do you explain this document?" Vanessa stammered. Her composure cracked, hands twitching as she reached for words that wouldn't come. She tried to say she acted in good faith, that she believed she had a stake in the property, but her voice faltered. The forged signature on the screen behind her glared like a neon sign. Nathan remained silent. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched, his gaze fixed on the table. The man who once laughed with me over midnight paint swatches wouldn't even raise his eyes. Time stretched, the ticking clock loud in my ears. Then the gavel struck. "The property belongs solely to Emily Lawson," the judge declared. "The defendants have no legal claim. Ms. Vanessa Lawson will face an investigation for fraud. Mr. Nathan Lawson will pay compensatory damages for violation of privacy." The words rang like a bell. Relief didn't come in a flood. It came in a slow trickle, seeping into the cracks betrayal had left behind. I turned slightly, catching Rachel's nod from the gallery, her eyes steady and proud. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence was enough. When the hearing ended, whispers trailed Vanessa as she left the courtroom. Her once polished image shattered. People who had believed her lies now looked away, unwilling to meet her eyes. Nathan walked out alone, his face pale, the weight of his choices heavy on his back. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. That same afternoon, Olivia placed divorce papers before me in her office. My hand shook only for a moment before I signed. My marriage had already died long ago. This was simply the final breath. 2 months later, Ivy was born. The hospital room filled with sunlight as I held her tiny body against mine, her fingers curling around one of my own. Rachel stood beside me, tears glistening in her eyes, her laughter breaking through the quiet. I named her Ivy because it symbolized growth and resilience, a plant that clings and climbs, finding light even in the darkest places. When I moved into a smaller apartment on the edge of town, the walls were bare, but they were mine. Rachel helped me hang curtains. Jessica brought over lasagna. Olivia stopped by once to check in, smiling at Ivy in her crib by the window. The space smelled of fresh paint and baby lotion, not betrayal. At night, I would rock Ivy to sleep, her soft breaths steady against my chest. Sometimes my gaze would linger on the dusty photo I'd placed in a drawer, me and Vanessa as children, smiling in dresses our mother had sewn. It hurt to look at, but it reminded me how far I had come and how much I had survived. I no longer needed their approval. I no longer chased their love. I had built a home, not out of walls or contracts, but out of truth, resilience, and the tiny heartbeat that now filled my life with meaning. As I rocked Ivy to sleep in our new home, I knew the past was ashes, and we would grow from here. There are moments in life when betrayal cuts so deep that it feels like the world itself has turned against you. Emily's story is one of those moments, a reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds are inflicted not by strangers, but by those we once trusted most. Her husband's silence, her sister's cruelty, and the cold stares of those at the party could have broken her. Instead, they revealed something she had carried all along: resilience. What Emily learned is something many of us forget. A home is not defined by walls or furniture, but by trust and the people who honor it. When that trust is shattered, the building may remain, but the sense of safety disappears. In her pain, Emily also discovered the importance of boundaries. Family ties can be precious, but they are not a free pass to exploitation or manipulation. To love someone does not mean to surrender your dignity. She learned that justice is not about revenge, but about reclaiming her voice. She walked into a courtroom with the weight of betrayal on her shoulders and walked out with the truth by her side. And perhaps the most powerful lesson is that self-worth must never be placed in someone else's hands. Emily was not defined by her sister's jealousy or her husband's betrayal. She was defined by the strength she found to stand tall when others tried to push her down. The birth of her daughter, Ivy, became more than just a beginning. It became a symbol of growth after devastation. Like Ivy climbing a wall, Emily's spirit found a way to reach for light, no matter how heavy the shadows had been. In the end, she discovered that family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the friend who offers you a place to sleep, the colleague who tells you the truth, the lawyer who fights beside you. True family is chosen in the moments of crisis. Her journey is a warning, but also a promise. It warns us of the hidden dangers that can lurk behind familiar smiles. And it promises that even when trust is broken, healing is possible. We all crave belonging. We all long for a place where we are seen and valued. However, Emily's story tells us that belonging cannot come at the cost of self-respect. When betrayal comes, the path forward is not to beg for love from those who refuse to give it. The path forward is to honor yourself enough to walk away. Her story is proof that closure is not always about reconciliation. Sometimes it is about liberation. And so Emily left the ashes of her old life behind, carrying only what mattered: her child, her dignity, and her unshakable strength. She showed us that survival is not weakness, and silence is not surrender. It is the quiet preparation for a stronger tomorrow. She taught us that even in the face of cruelty, we can choose not to mirror it, but to rise above it. This story is not just about loss. It is about rediscovering honor, rebuilding boundaries, and remembering that no betrayal can erase our worth. Have you ever experienced this? The sting of betrayal from someone you thought would never hurt you? If you enjoyed this story, leave the number 1 in the comments. And subscribe to the Family Fallout Stories to hear the next story. And remember this: sometimes the cruelest endings are the ones that free us to begin again.